What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Tech Haberdashery. I took a little bit of a longer break than I had originally intended. Buying a house and planning a wedding kind of sucks the time out of everything, especially when you're working full-time on top of that. So been trying to get my feet under me with the new home ownership thing. It's a lot of responsibility, but it's great to have. I'm happy to have my own place now. So moved into a new place, new office. We'll see how it works out. Eventually, I would like to turn this space into something a little better looking than it is currently, but as you can see, it's not exactly pristine. I'm still haven't quite got it all tweaked out the way I want it, but hopefully you'll forgive me and for the mess and for my long hiatus, but we will move forward and see what we can do for the channel. So in my grand return here in 2021, I kind of struggled to figure out what I would make a video about. I mean, I've got a couple minor projects going on, but nothing major. And since I have nothing major, I'll just talk about those and what my experience has been getting myself set up here at my new place. I decided that I would just build a new computer. I had some parts laying around and I was less and less using my Mac Mini. To take it back a little ways here, a while back, my Mac Mini, my 2018 Mac Mini, it had started suffering kernel panics, I think after getting the Big Sur update. So I upgraded to Big Sur, and then one of those subsequent updates caused it to kernel panic. Sometimes it would kernel panic on boot, sometimes it would happen just while using the system. And then eventually I got to the point where it wouldn't boot at all. As soon as it started to boot, it would immediately kernel panic. Maybe it's a hardware failure, maybe it's not related to the OS at all or an upgrade. I don't know. I haven't been able to really put any time into troubleshooting it. But in the latter days of 2020 and going through January of 2021 with buying the house, I was just using my Mac Mini less and less and less. And when the kernel panics started, I found myself using my main desktop computer, which was dual booting OpenSUSE and Windows 10. Windows 10 was just for playing some games on. OpenSUSE was my productivity side of things. And just using it less and less, I thought, maybe I should just convert to Linux full time. I mean, I'm not using Mac OS for much. I mean, I have my Time Machine backups, I can get to my data, so I'm not really worried about data loss. That's on external drives and offline and other places. So I should be fine. Unfortunately, I made a series of compounding errors and wiped out the home folder of my OpenSUSE distro, and then in attempting to recover that with some recovery tools and not having a very good grasp of how those recovery tools function compared to what I've used in Windows, so I'm a Windows sysadmin full time, I ended up basically blowing away my OpenSUSE install as well. So after that couple of poor decisions, I decided it's not really worth dual booting anymore. So I wiped out my gaming computer and I have just Windows 10 on it now. And then I decided I would build this ITX system with some spare parts and a couple things I had to buy online, not too much. And now I'm just gonna have a dedicated workstation, which is gonna be running Linux, and then I have my gaming PC. So let's talk about the specs. I ended up buying an AMD A10 9700E. I think it was just under $50 on the eBay. I unfortunately only had one stick of DDR4 RAM, and it was one of the older AMD Radeon styles. I did an older video on an all AMD build when I was originally trying to build my gaming PC. I was trying to do AMD and Asus everything, and this is one of the leftover RAM modules from that build. But I needed a second one, so I bought a Kingston HyperX Fury. It has the same frequency at 2400 megahertz and CL15 timings. So I crossed my fingers and said, even though it's two different brands, hopefully the matching of the speeds is enough and it'll be fine. For the storage, I wanted an NVMe, I should say. I didn't need one. I have a couple SATA solid state drives, but given that I'm not sure if one of those solid state drives is failing, I decided I would just go for something new and decided to buy a Silicon Power NVMe drive, and bought a 0.5 terabyte drive for that and put it on the motherboard. For the power supply, I had originally thought I was just going to be able to use the power supply which I had swapped out for my old external GPU, the Sonnet B350. Instead, that one doesn't have all the connectors on it that you would need for a full computer build, perhaps to no surprise to no one except for me. So I ultimately had to pull the Intermax 550 watt power supply out of that Sonnet and put it into this case, which ultimately turned out to be a good thing because the Intermax is it's a modular system. So having been able to not connect any cables that I don't need, it saves on, well, it makes cable management easier and improves the airflow, not that this system requires a great deal of airflow. For the wireless and Bluetooth, I used the same EDUP PCIe card, which I had in my desktop while I was dual booting with OpenSUSE. That card is an Intel 7265 and it has Bluetooth 4.2 on it. And I had an extra Corsair 120 millimeter white LED fan. I think just having the stock AMD cooler for the processor and having this fan exhausting air out the back is more than enough. It's not a high performance system. I'm not doing any kind of strenuous work on this thing, or I don't plan to at least. If I do, then we'll have to look at upgrading the coolers and the exhaust fan. We'll see how it plays out in the long term, but that's where I'm at currently with the build. So in my efforts to step away from Windows and Mac OS more and more and go to Linux full time, how did it work out for me? What were the ups and what were the downs? I decided in that, having originally learned Linux on SUSE back in college and having used OpenSUSE many times since then, I decided to give Gecko Linux a shot because Gecko Linux, the rolling release, has the option to use the Pantheon desktop, which is a desktop environment that looks similar in a lot of ways and acts in a lot of ways like Mac OS, which, given Mac OS has its many faults and they are it's fair to criticize them, but there's an aesthetic to Mac OS that feels right for me. I understand it. It gives me, it's comfortable. I don't know what else to say. It's just a desktop environment that I like, and Pantheon tries to emulate that as best that it can. So I decided Pantheon is the right desktop environment. Gecko is built on OpenSUSE. I mean, even when you boot the system, it'll actually say OpenSUSE Tumbleweed in this case, because I was using the Gecko rolling. They don't have Pantheon on the static as of this time. So I went forward with that, and unfortunately, it did not work out as well as I had hoped. For no reason that I've been able to determine, the wireless and Bluetooth just shut off. I wish I had an explanation. I've searched online, I reinstalled the OS, I've checked the cards to make sure that they were functional, and it would just happen regularly. I went so far as to adjust the UEFI settings to turn off power save modes and sleep states and hibernation. I went inside the Gecko OS and through the terminal I turned off power saving modes for Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and it just seemed randomly, once or twice a day, sometimes back to back, sometimes many hours apart, the wireless and Bluetooth would just shut off. I searched some online forums, couldn't really find anything helpful, so I decided that maybe Gecko is not for me. I had tried both the Gecko Pantheon, which was a rolling release, and I'd also switched over to Gecko Static, which is based on OpenSUSE Leap, which is what I had in my desktop before, and it was very stable, it was great. Like I said, the issues I had were of my own doing, and unfortunately, even in the Gecko Static, which I used the GNOME desktop for that, the same thing kept occurring. And I was starting to think maybe it was the wireless card or the Bluetooth card, except I was having the same issue on my Motile laptop. It was previously my Nextcloud server that I had used the wireless and Bluetooth on for that as well. And when I switched my Nextcloud off of that laptop, again, server, quote unquote, when I switched my Nextcloud off of that and I installed Gecko Linux on here, it began doing the same thing. What I did notice is that it's Intel wireless cards in both of the systems, so maybe it has something to do with that. Even though they're different chipsets, maybe both of them being Intel wireless cards, maybe that's the problem. Maybe Gecko Linux just doesn't play well with Intel Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Again, I don't know for sure. What I ultimately ended up doing for my desktop is switching it over to Linux Mint 20.10, and it has been, for more than a week now, it's just been rock solid. I'm having a little issue with getting the UI customized quite the way I like. I mean, I like the Mate desktop is what I went with, and so I kind of like the GNOME 2 stylings of it, but it wasn't really what I was looking for, so I gave in and I installed Plank so I can have my dock, and I'm hiding the taskbar at the top. I auto hide it. So it's been, it's going to sleep on me, but it's been great ever since installing Linux Mint. I didn't have to change any of the power settings to turn off the power save features of the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth or prevent it from going to sleep or anything like that. And the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth have been just fantastic. So I wish I could say I knew exactly what it was that Gecko Linux doesn't like about this particular hardware configuration or that of my laptop. Again, I think it must be related to the Intel wireless chips. They're both AC, Intel AC standards, even though it's not the same chip in either system. So if you care, it's the 3168 NGW that is in the Motile laptop. So yeah, we are getting started here. I've got to get a good backup strategy planned for Linux Mint. I know it's got this time shift feature built in. I don't know how useful that is. Tom, who runs the Switch to Linux channel and Discord server, he's a big Linux Mint guy. I switched my dad over to Linux Mint, so I think Linux Mint is going to be great going forward for me. But I'll ask Tom about backup solutions. I think that I'm curious. I don't think he uses time shift. I think he says there's issues with it that he's found. So I'll be definitely getting his opinion on it. But things are progressing over here, and I am back, although I probably won't be as active as I was in 2020, at least not for the first half of the year. Once my fiance and I are married and she moves in here, you know, it's gonna be a workup and getting used to living with somebody. So there's a lot going on. So Tech Haberdashery as a channel is back. It's not back full time. I said, you know, doing a video a month like I had originally envisioned for the channel, and I don't really have anything planned. I'm putting Ubuntu Budgie on this laptop, and it's been pretty good so far, so I might do a video on that. I'm thinking about converting my Mac Mini over there. It's lying in the corner. I'm thinking about converting that into a home theater PC, and then maybe, oh, I've got a Rock 64 as well that I've thought about maybe turning into a NAS hub. So a little single board computer, the same people who make the Pinebook Pro that I have had a love-hate relationship with over the past year. So maybe I can do a NAS build with that. I had an idea of maybe turning it into like a security camera hub, if that would be possible. I don't know if it's really powerful enough for that, but my hope is that if I have a couple security cameras, I can just run the raw footage to external USB drives, and the actual Rock 64 will not have to do a whole lot of processing on its own. If that's not feasible, then, like I said, I might just fall back on it being a NAS solution. So anyway, that's it. That's what's been going on. That's where I plan on going, roughly speaking, with the channel for the year of 2021. I don't have anything planned for the first half, so hopefully second half I'll have something more entertaining. So anyway, thank you all for watching. Thank you for staying tuned. Thank you for subscribing. Again, this is all just a hobby. I don't make any kind of money off of doing this. I don't advertise. I don't monetize. So it is what it is. And I hope that you are enjoying the content, and I will see you all in the next one. Thank you, and